There we go. We are live. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the relaunch of Real Movie Talk. Wow, we've already got a first comment already. I haven't even got into the intro. So thank you for joining us, guys. We hope you enjoyed this upcoming live stream. We're going to be talking for the next hour and a half or so, all about movies, all about the latest news from the film industry, and also reviewing a couple of films as well. Now, if you don't know who this gentleman beside me is, across the other side of the country. This is Ben. If you don't know him, he is also known as the DC TV show on YouTube and also has his own film YouTube channel as well. And is also a senior film critic for Discussing Film and now writing for Screen Rant too. So he knows his stuff when it comes to film. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Ben? Just to introduce yourself?
No, just excited to start this again because I love talking about films. It's all I do normally. So
pretty much, yeah. I mean, me and Ben had a podcast that we used to do, and it was very on and off. It was very inconsistent. But I thought, why not move it over to this channel and start doing it in live streams? As you guys know, I've been doing a lot of live streams recently. It's just something I've been delving back into, and I've just been finding it a lot of fun. It's very easy this way, and I just find it very chill and relaxing. So I thought, why not move it over here, do it in live streams, do it on camera. It'd be much better that way. So yeah, this is Real Movie Talk, which is spelled REEL. You'll see in the title. What we're going to do on the show is, as I said, we're mainly going to discuss movie news and also review a couple of films and stuff like that, depending on what's going on in the week. We also have different topics and stuff like that. So let's start off with the news. Now, as I said to you before we started filming, I actually thought there was more news than there actually is this week. But I went back throughout the week and basically picked out some of the biggest news topics that we've got to discuss. So first of all, I'm going to start off with some very sad news, which is that the actor, of course, known as Sean Connery, actually passed away last week. Of course, best known for playing James Bond, obviously the original James Bond. He has now passed away. So how did you react to this news? Because for me, like, I am quite a big fan of Sean Connery as Bond, particularly. I have been watching the Bond films very recently, actually, and I really enjoyed sort of his era of Bond. I thought he was really strong, really compelling as the character.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, I also have always been, ever since I was a kid, a huge fan of Indiana Jones. My favorite Indiana Jones film being The Last Crusade, which he, of course, is in. So I quite like Sean Connery quite a fair bit. So to see him pass away was definitely quite sad for me. But how did you react to it?
Well, I'm less of a Bond fan because I did watch them when I was younger, but recently I haven't gone back to watch any of them, so it's less so Bond for me. But about a week before he died, I went to cinema and I watched this film called The Untouchables, directed by Brian De Palma, and honestly, it was one of the best films I've ever seen. I think it's easily one of the best kind of crime films, and I think, him pairing up with great directors, which he's done, and I'll mention that in a minute.
Yeah,
he's such a good actor. He won Best Supporting Actor for his role in The Untouchables. He's just so good in that damn film. You just got to watch it. I can't explain it.
Yeah,
there is just something about his performance that's just so good. And then I also want to mention he worked with Hitchcock toward the end of Hitchcock's career. I think it was just after The Birds. He made a film called Marnie with Tippi Hedren, who was in The Birds. And Sean Connery played the lead in that, the leading male. And he's really, really good in that. So those two are the films where I mainly know him from. Obviously, I know he's Bond, and I've watched them when I was younger. But I don't have as personal a connection to those other films as I do to these two, I think.
Yeah.
But it was very sad.
Yeah, it was definitely very sad news. I was very shocked by it too. I didn't expect it to, sort of come across my timeline when I saw that he had passed away. And again, it's something very recent for me. Like, I always knew him as sort of, Henry Jones Sr. in the Indiana Jones The Last Crusade when I watched that film.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always watched that film ever since I was a kid. But Bond is something that I've gotten into recently, like pretty much throughout lockdown. I started watching all the Bond movies and watching the Connery era. Like, his films that he has as Bond are definitely like genre defining. Like, his performance, he's so charismatic, he's so smooth and charming, despite some of the things of the time, like the women abuse and stuff like that. It's a very, you can't deny how charismatic that man is. And I think that his particular films as Bond, even though there are a couple that I wasn't too hot on, like I really don't like Thunderball, which I think is a hot take apparently. But stuff
Hmm.
like Goldfinger and You Only Live Twice, I thought were just awesome, awesome films. So I was very sad to see him pass away because he really has sort of come up, in my mind recently, just because of my recent Bond watches. And I think he was he's a true national treasure, really, for especially for the UK.
Yeah,
And Bond is pretty much the UK film character, like
yeah,
ultimate British film character. And he started all that. So he's definitely leaving quite a proficient or prolific legacy behind him. So rest in peace, Sean Connery. Now, more sad news. There's actually quite a lot of sad news, actually. So the next piece of news is that here in the UK, that this actually applies to, is that cinemas have closed down yet again. This, of course, happened earlier in the year when the first lockdown came into play, and now we have a second lockdown, which has now come into force here in the UK, and cinemas have been forced to close down again. Not that there's been anything coming out necessarily, at least in terms of like big box office numbers and, these bigger films and stuff like that. It's not like anything's come out recently,
yeah.
but cinemas have been forced to close again. And it seems like, I think you in particular, you've been going quite a lot, even in the past sort of few
Hmm.
months as they have been reopening again.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've been going a lot, and in the period between the 31st, which was actually my birthday when they announced the lockdown, so that was a
Yeah.
great birthday present. Um, and then up till when it closed on Thursday, I watched 6 films in the cinema. I went
Need to get the
crazy.
most of it.
Yeah, so I am especially annoyed about that because I think, yeah, I get the lockdown and I think maybe it is needed. But the thing is, I feel really bad for the cinemas because
Mm.
it's been widely reported that the cinemas didn't contribute to any big spreads. Like there's 0 cases of it spreading via people going to the cinema. So I felt especially bad for them, and especially for this cinema in London called the Prince Charles, because they literally opened 3 weeks ago, and they plan to stay open because they were doing everything to,
Yeah.
make everything safe. Like they took out 2 seats between and everything like that. Also, the BFI, they were taking out seats, literally ripping them out so that there can be proper distancing and everything. You had the London Film Festival, which ran very smoothly in person and online. And I just feel especially bad for the cinemas considering that they literally, there was no reason to shut them down apart from to shut everything else down, and it just came along with everything.
Yeah.
So I feel very bad for them, and obviously I love going to cinema, and I've made the most out of it. I've been going a lot because I feel safe when I go there, and I think, the statistics show that it's reasonable to go back to the cinema and stay safe. I mean, if it was risky, of course, I would not be annoyed about it in any way. But yeah, so that's my main annoyance to do with the cinemas shutting down because, it was just kind of packed in with all the other places like the bars and restaurants, which I don't know if they contributed much to spreads, but more likely than the cinemas, right?
Yeah,
If it
I'd
was
say so.
so yeah, that's my thoughts. Yeah, I've been going a lot, and it's a bit annoying, but at least I got this projector for my birthday, and it's really cool.
Oh, I
And
saw that on
it's like,
Twitter, yeah.
yeah, and so I watched Mank yesterday. I projected it, and it was kind of like I was in the cinema.
That's
Obviously, I
sick.
wasn't in the room, but the projection was like I was projecting it,
Yeah.
like I was looking at a projection. So it was very cool.
Yeah. I mean, I see it as very sad news and also very unfortunate for cinemas as well, especially because, like you say, there has really been no evidence or no case towards,
Hmm.
cinemas being not safe for COVID.
Yeah,
And I've been going as much as I possibly can in the last few months. I mean, unfortunately for me, my local cinema that I go to, like at least chain cinema, Cineworld, the one that's closest to me, given the fact that I basically live on the border of Wales, was closed for ages anyway because Wales went into a full lockdown just before we
yeah,
did. Um, so it was then down to my local independent cinema, which I work right next to. And I was going there sort of once every couple of weeks when there was stuff there that they were showing. So I've been going as much as I possibly can and try my best to support cinemas and stuff like that because they do need it in this time.
Yeah.
And I've been really enjoying going back. I think that even though it is different, there is distancing and you have to wear a mask and stuff like that. I honestly think that the cinemas reopening was almost a blessing in disguise when it comes to masks, because I thought to myself, oh, the first time I went back, which was back in, I think, July, which is when I watched The Truth.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, oh, I'm really not gonna. I mean, I don't have a problem with masks at all, but I was like, I just don't think I'm gonna like sitting throughout a film and watching it. I think it would be distracting, and I'm just not gonna enjoy it. But it really didn't. Like, I kind of just got used to it, and I think because of that, because I've spent so many hours in the cinema now with wearing a mask, it's made the mask feel completely ineffective. Like it makes me feel like I don't even wear it anymore, because it's done that for so long now. So I'm very sad that they're closing. I mean, it is difficult as well because I think cinemas have been really struggling, not only because people aren't going back, but also because obviously there's no new films coming out. Hollywood just are delaying everything. They're not releasing anything. But Tenet was the experiment. It didn't really work. At least not as well as they would have hoped. So everything's just been pushed back, and now there's no new releases really this year. Big box office, maker wise. The only thing that's still left, I think, is Wonder Woman, which is still set for Christmas Day, but
we'll see.
That's gonna go. So it's sad, and I mean, this lockdown is only lasting for 4 weeks here in the UK, at least as of right now. It's only just started, so hopefully, that'll take us into sort of mid-December, and we'll be able to continue for the rest of the year and go into the new year. Hopefully, if people obey the rules, which they probably won't because we're British and we don't like being told what to do, but I'm really hoping that we just get back into the cinema as quickly as possible and we can actually get films coming out again, because I'm already missing it. And it's only been, I think it was last Friday I went to this. It was the last time I went, and I'm already missing it.
Yeah, I'm missing it. But if we quickly go back to Tenet and how people have responded to its results, it kind of annoys me because we are, the cinemas, when they were open, and some are still open around the world, they're not full capacity, number one.
No.
And so they're not going to make as much. And also the times have to be staggered, so there's obviously less showings. Some cinemas around the world are not open. Big places like LA and New York are not open. And so with all of that, and the fact that we're in a pandemic and not everyone wants to go back to the cinema, lots of people want to stay at home and watch films at home, which is fine because that's what they choose to do. But I think it's bad that everyone has been comparing Tenet's box office results to that of, oh, what happens if Tenet came out when there wasn't a pandemic on? And yes, it probably lost a bit of money, but maybe it'll eventually coup it back up with DVD and Blu-ray releases and stuff like that. And they are planning a run in New York and LA when they can. So potentially in the future, it could break even. And I think, yes, the production budget was really, really high. It was like 200 something million. And yes, it lost money, but 300 something million in the middle of a pandemic. And I think it really showed the power of worldwide audience, because it only made like 50 million in America because, most of the big markets aren't open because they got heavily affected. But then the worldwide audience brought in, 250 million or something, like maybe 300 million worldwide. So I think, there was an interview with Christopher Nolan the other day. I think people were taking it the wrong way. I agree with Nolan because I think it really shows that it does work worldwide. But I think what studios have to take from this is maybe production budgets shouldn't be that high if they're producing new films in the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, I think it has been kind of unfair the way Tenet has been treated because, to be honest, what did it make? 370 or something million?
Yeah.
Like, that's more than I thought it was going to make, to be honest. It actually got a better result than I was expecting. And, a lot of people look at a film like Tenet and they say, oh, well, it massively underperformed. I mean, there are a lot of films out there that would kill for that amount of money
Exactly
at the box office. So it's not, I don't think it's a bad result, to be honest. I understand why it scared studios off, especially
Yeah,
because, a lot of these bigger films, especially when you look at like Disney and stuff like that, who want to release films like Black Widow and these other Marvel films that are going to be, pretty much guaranteed billion-dollar films otherwise. I understand that they're scared off by that. And it's a difficult situation. It's really tricky because you want to release these films, you want to keep the interest there, but at the same time, it's still a business at the end of the day, and they need to make as much money as they can. So it's really tricky. But I do think that Tenet was a very interesting case. It did do better than I thought it was going to. And as you say, there were so many things, there's so many different factors at play in the fact that there is limited capacity in cinemas and the show times are staggered. And it's all these factors combined together. And the fact that it's still made close to $400 million, I still think is pretty good. And like you say, there's still other places. It hasn't opened in New York yet. It hasn't opened in LA. Two of the biggest markets in terms of like individual cities in the US, for the domestic box office, probably the two biggest cities haven't even opened yet. So there's a lot to consider. And I think that, with cinemas closing here in the UK, I'm not quite sure how much Tenet made here, but
it made a lot.
Yeah, and I think the expectations for Tenet were unfortunately too high. I mean, you've got a director like Christopher Nolan, who is known for making these huge blockbusters and generally making typically billion-dollar films in the last few years. You kind of go into those things and expect it to be this big success, and unfortunately, Tenet was kind of an experiment, really. That's what it became, at least. It was, just saying, well, let's see how it does. And to be honest, I think it did okay. And I as I said, I understand why it scared other studios off, and it's a tricky thing they have to navigate. But I think it's definitely getting sort of unfairly treated by the media.
Yeah, and I just looked up its UK box office numbers, and it made nearly as much as America. It made about half of American, about 25 million, which is very good considering that most of the American, obviously we can't really compare the UK to America because of how many cinemas are in America, right?
Yeah.
The UK is just a small island,
yeah, we're tiny,
which so happens to have a big cinema-going audience. I believe when Interstellar and some other ones opened in the UK, the box office was, pretty similar to that. So it wasn't a big change, and I think it did pretty well over here. So, and it was very good for cinema operators and cinema chains here. It definitely made them a lot of money, and it made them be able to sustain for a while. Obviously, Cineworld had to shut because they were scared that there was no new films coming out, which is understandable, but it was enough for a lot of places. So it did good over here.
I mean, I watched Tenet at Cineworld, and I watched it on I watched it I think it was a few days after it came. It came out on a Wednesday, right? I watched it on a Monday, and that was a bank holiday, and it was packed. My IMAX screen, well, as packed as it could have been. Given capacity, like it was quite busy. It was interesting because that was the first time it felt like a true sort of opening. Even though it wasn't the opening night, it felt like a big release. That energy was there. It kind of felt like that. So I definitely think these films, it's not all about the audience. It's not all about people wanting to stay home and stuff like that. Of course, those people are out there, and that's absolutely justified. But there's also these other factors of what cinemas are being forced to do due to government guidelines in order to protect customers and protect staff and stuff like that, which also contribute to a loss of money. So again, it's such a tricky thing. And I think that studios this year have been really experimental in what they're doing, and they're trying to find good solutions. We've seen so many films go to PVOD and streaming services and stuff like that. Disney releasing Mulan and Disney Plus and stuff like that. Everyone's trying different things just to see what works, which I think is quite interesting. I think it's made this year very, very interesting in regards to film. Even though there hasn't been as much coming out, what has been coming out has been distributed in fairly different ways, which I think has been fun. It's just a very weird situation, and with cinemas closing again, I think with especially places like these chain cinemas, independent cinemas haven't been too bad because they can show smaller films that they would typically show anyway. But some of these bigger chain cinemas, they don't typically go for those smaller films. They do mainly focus on the bigger films. And because they're not releasing, they've been going back and releasing like old classics and stuff. Like I watched Back to the Future and Star Wars and stuff like that. And that's fine. That's all well and good. But I don't really feel like that's enough to sustain them. Like is the interest for that really there? I mean, when I've been to the cinema to watch those films, like I said, I've watched those two. I've watched like Jurassic Park as another example. There were people there, and there were people definitely enjoying the experience. But at the same time, those people who don't want to go to the cinema will be like, well, I'm not going to go to the cinema to watch this film, or I could literally just watch it at home. So again, I think that was a tactic they came up with to re-release these classics, but it's not really been enough for them. So it's very tricky. It's it's very sad too.
Yeah.
I guess it's just, again, it's the time we're in, unfortunately. But hopefully they'll reopen again soon, and in the new year we can start getting some new stuff. Hopefully.
Yeah, and I was looking up the statistics for Nolan's past films in the UK, and films like Dunkirk made a lot of money, made like $80 million. You know, that's pretty damn big. Inception made like 56 million, so it made nearly half of Inception's. That's not bad, considering how well beloved Inception was. And Interstellar, it made about just over 10 million less. That's not bad, considering we're in a pandemic. It did pretty well here.
So I think that just shows really.
Yeah.
It's just, again, there is really, I want to sit here and come up with a solution, but there really isn't one. It is just a thing where we kind of just have to do the best we can and wait until things clear up, and then things can start going back to normal. But just at the moment, nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows how to best handle the situation, because even though, like we say, comparatively, Tenet didn't perform that bad as people think it has, it's still not what they want, and it's still not the numbers that they need, really. So again, there's no real clear answer to that. But hopefully, come the new year, we should have something, some light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. So the next piece of news, which is very relieving to me because I never thought I'd see the day, the Uncharted movie has finally wrapped filming. I cannot believe that this is actually happening. I mean, this film has been in development for so many years. I think it's been since like 2009. This film has been in development, had so many directors come and go. It's had a complete change up of the lead actor. It's just ridiculous. But I have to say, I'm very excited about this film, while at the same time being extremely skeptical about it. Just to add some context, the Uncharted movie is based on the Uncharted video game series, which is a PlayStation exclusive franchise, and my favorite video game series of all time. So I'm a huge Uncharted fan. It's so close to my heart. And when they said they were making a movie, I was just like, no, don't make a movie. They're pretty close to films as they are. Like, don't go anywhere near it. And then they said they were making like a young Nathan Drake film with Tom Holland. And I'm just very back and forth on the whole thing. But it's finally wrapped filming. And I have to say, we've gotten some details about it recently, pictures and stuff like that. We saw our first look of Tom Holland as Nathan Drake, which I've got to say, it's not what I expected. When they said they were doing a young Nathan Drake, I was expecting, if people watching this have played Uncharted 3, I was expecting the young Nathan Drake from that game, like from those sections in that game. That's what I was expecting. But this photo shows him, very gruff with the gun belt and stuff like that. So he's clearly like adult-ish Nathan Drake, which I didn't expect.
Yeah.
But I will say Tom Holland looks great. I think those pictures look awesome. Does it look like Nathan Drake? Not necessarily. Clothing-wise, yes, the outfit is absolutely perfection. It's still weird seeing Tom Holland as Nathan Drake for me. But that's just the thing I'm going to have to get over because I'm such a huge fan. But I think he looks great. Still very unsure about Mark Wahlberg as Sully. I think that's horrendous casting. I do find it hilarious that he was initially cast as Nathan Drake and is now aged out of the role of Drake and is now playing Sully. Yeah. I find that hysterical. He did release a picture of his mustache that he's now growing for the film. I'm very skeptical. I'm very mixed. But I mean, what is good is that Nolan North, who voices Nathan Drake in the games, has been to the set and sort of gave his blessing to Tom Holland. So that's a good sign. Especially because I know Nolan North hasn't exactly been the most supportive of the film, and neither has Neil Druckmann, who is sort of the lead developer at Naughty Dog, who made the games. He's been very dismissive of it. I don't know. I'm very mixed on it. Like, I'm very excited about it because I can't wait to see what they do with it. And I think it could be great. It could be the one. It could be the video game that breaks the curse. It could be it, but it also could be absolute trash. like most of them. I think they're equally possible. I mean, Ruben Fleischer's directing it, who is the guy for the Zombieland films. Interesting choice. I was really happy initially when they cast, or not when they cast, when they got, what's his name? The guy who did Bumblebee.
Travis Knight.
Travis Knight. I was very excited when he was brought on to direct because I thought he was a great choice. Also, they did brought in Sean Levi at one point. Thought he was a good choice. Ruben Fleischer is interesting, but I think he could handle a movie like this. It's something I'm very, very skeptical on because, again, it's something that I really want to see succeed and I really want to be good. But there's just so many different elements in it that they've announced and they've spoken about where I just go, no, no, no. And again, that is just me being an Uncharted fanboy. It's hard for me to look past those things, but I just keep looking at it and going, this just looks wrong, but also right. And I'm confused. But what do you think of these photos? What do you think about this movie?
So I don't know much about Uncharted because I've actually never played the game. I don't play many games, so that's my own fault. I hear a lot and I listen to stuff about, sometimes like the new Spider-Man Miles Morales game. I've been hearing about it, watched some videos, but I don't end up playing the games because I'm just not a big gaming guy. And so I don't know much about Uncharted, but I like the look of it. I think Tom Holland looks cool in that photo.
Yeah.
I don't know properly. Well, I've seen what he looks like in the game, but I don't have much attachment to it. So I think it looks cool. Kind of looks a bit like the Tomb Raider kind of style that we saw in Alicia Vikander's film, and that's my favorite video game adaptation. I thought it was really good. I had a great time. So if it's something like that, I would be very happy. And I trust Ruben Fleischer. Venom was it was
He
funny.
directed Venom as well, didn't he?
Yeah, it was funny, but it wasn't, I don't think,
I
as they
enjoy Venom.
expected it to be. I liked it, but it wasn't a very good film.
No.
It was okay and funny. But I really like the two Zombieland films. I think they're really good. They're hilarious, and so I trust him because I think he's a good director. But he has the potential to misfire a bit like Venom. But apart from that, yeah, Tom Holland looks cool to me, everything that I've seen. And Mark Wahlberg's mustache looked really weird. I don't know about the character because I don't know the character, but to me, it looked like he put on a fake mustache or something. It was weird.
Yeah, it's just such a bizarre casting for me. Like, I quite like the fact that Sony's been loyal to him and it's just like he was cast as Nathan Drake back in the day, and now they've kept him on to play Sully. But it's just hilarious that he's aged out of that role. I will never. It's like when they cast Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. I just look at it and go, don't see it, just don't see it. And I think that he's such odd casting. Like I said, I mean, I've always said, to be fair, that Tom Holland would be a perfect casting for young Nathan Drake. Because again, people who've played the game, those sections in Uncharted 3 where you play as young Nathan Drake, I think that is literally dead on Tom Holland. But based on this photo that we had of him, he's clearly supposed to be in like his early 20s at least, which is probably around the same age that Tom Holland actually is in real life. So it's definitely older than what I thought they were going to go for with this film. But at the same time, I'm kind of happy about that because I always said that even though I think he'd be a young Nathan Drake, I don't really know if I care to see a young Nathan Drake movie. I'd rather see an Uncharted film where Nathan Drake is an adult. But then as a counterbalance to that, I don't want to see adult Nathan Drake on screen because I don't want anyone else to do the voice other than Nolan North because it's so synonymous with him. So it's very, very difficult for me. But I am excited to see it. I think he looks great in the photos. I'm just going to have to separate my fanboyisms when I watch the film and just try and appreciate it for what it is. It's just, there's a lot riding on it, and there's also a lot going against it. I think Tom could be great in the role, especially, I mean, we've seen The Devil All the Time recently, which has really shown that Tom Holland can do, these more dramatic roles and stuff like that. He isn't just, Spider-Man, which unfortunately he will be typecast as probably for the rest of his life. But we've seen that he can do other stuff. And I think that performance in The Devil All the Time is very informative of what we could see in a job.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. Mark Wahlberg, still don't know. I mean, I like Mark Wahlberg, but is he Sully? No. But anyway, that's enough of me talking about Uncharted. It's wrapped filming, so it's actually done. It's in the can, and I'm very surprised to actually see this happen, given how long this movie has actually been in development. Now, we were talking about cinemas closing and films being delayed. We actually now have two more films that have been delayed indefinitely, which basically just means that they'll announce a date when they're ready, which is Ryan Reynolds' Free Guy and also Kenneth Branagh's Death on the Nile. Both of these films are Fox Films, 20th Century Studios, now owned by Disney. So Disney has decided to delay these two films. I mean, how are you feeling about these films? I mean, Free Guy for me looks interesting. It looks fun. I don't know if it's something that it kind of looks like to me as if they've come up with this solid idea. How it's actually going to translate into film, I'm not too sure. Death on the Nile could go either way for me. I think it looks great, but I also really like the look of the first film, and I didn't like it at all. So it could go either way, Death on the Nile. But how are you feeling about these two films?
Yeah, Free Guy, I don't have much interest in it. I didn't really like any of the trailers. I think it looks a bit silly, a bit over the top.
Yeah.
The only reason I watch it is for Ryan Reynolds, because I really like Ryan Reynolds. But, you know, everyone's complaints and his complaint with Green Lantern is there's too much CGI. This is filled with CGI. So what are we talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah, what are we
Yeah.
talking about? I don't know. I think it's kind of weird that he chose this role. I know he's going for big because he's big film star, one of the biggest film stars in the world. So I get that he needs to go in these big films, but I don't know if this looks very good. I don't think it does from what I've seen. So I don't have much interest about it, and I'm not surprised that it's delayed. All these films are getting delayed, so I reckon it might come out next summer or something like that. We'll have to wait and see. Death on the Nile was actually a film I was really looking forward to because I really liked
Yeah,
Kenneth
you like the
Branagh's
first
version
one,
of
don't you?
Murder on the Orient Express. Yeah, I really, really liked it. I thought, you know, it had me the whole way. I remember waiting for it to come out because obviously I'd read like parts of Murder on the Orient Express, or like murder mysteries, and yeah, the adaptation really worked for me. I really, really liked it. So I was naturally anticipating the second film, and I've really liked the trailers so far. It keeps on playing on the cinema, like when the
Yeah.
cinemas are open. So
It's a
I've
really good
watched the
trailer.
trailer loads of times, and so I was looking forward to it. You know, I think the whole Poirot like narration in the trailer
Yeah.
really got to me. I was like, oh, let me see this. So a
Yeah.
bit annoyed about that, but I was expecting the delay, and I'm not surprised about the delay. That may come out, I think, next like autumn, I would guess, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, as I said, Free Guy is a weird one. Like, I've never really been that interested in it. And it's kind of, I feel like it's a film that should sort of appeal to me more than it does. But it just isn't really doing it for me. Like, say, I'm the same as you. Like, the trailers just haven't really done much for me. I kind of look at it. I think it's got a stellar cast. And I think it could be funny in places. You know, it's got Ryan Reynolds, it's got Taika, Joe Keery, Jodie Comer, really strong cast.
Mhm.
And again, I think the concept is interesting, but it does kind of give me vibes of Ready Player One a little bit, which, yeah. And also, I
Well,
don't
I actually
know.
like that.
See, I really liked Ready Player One at the
I
time,
like that.
and then I watched it again, and I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know, I just don't really care about it. Like, I don't know, I really enjoyed it when I first watched it. Like, I don't know if my review for it's still up from like back in the day, but if you go watch it, like I gave it like a really positive review. But then I went back and watched it again, and I was like, yeah, I wasn't really feeling it. And this movie kind of gives me the same vibe as that. Obviously, it has got this kind of video game concept of Ryan Reynolds being basically an NPC in
Mhm.
this crazy sort of Grand Theft Auto-esque world. Again, interesting concept. I just don't know how that'll basically turn into a film. It could be really good. It could be really bad. I don't know. So it's a film that I'm interested to see, but not something I'm necessarily excited to see, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then Death on the Nile, as I said, I think it looks really good. Again, great cast. I'm a lot more excited for this than I was for the first one. For me, the first one, spoilers for Murder on the Orient Express, I just found the ending to be a complete cop-out, which, I don't know. You could actually tell me. I don't know this. Is that the same ending as the book?
Yeah.
It is. Okay, well,
Yeah, the
I mean,
ending where everyone
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that for me, like, I mean, obviously fair enough then for them sticking to the source material. It's just for me, I guess I'm saying as well, I don't like the ending of the book because I just found it to be a bit of
Yeah.
I just find it kind of boring when they're like, oh, it's this thing that everyone did, and I'm like, that's not fun. Like, give me an actual like reveal of like an actual of who actually did it. I don't really like this
So
kind of
you
cop
like
out
something
reveal.
more like Knives Out or something, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Like I love Knives Out.
Yeah, me too.
And Murder on the Orient Express, like again, I went into it. I really liked the trailers. I really liked the cast. I was excited about it, and I enjoyed it for the majority of it. And then it's just the ending. I was just like, no, you've lost me. But I'm hoping with Death on the Nile they'll do something a little bit different. And again, it's got a great cast. I love the trailer. I think it looks really fun. And again, it could go either way for me. It could either be really good and I could enjoy it way more than the first, or it could kind of go down a similar path, in which case it'll be, yeah. So them being delayed indefinitely doesn't surprise me. Again, everything's being delayed, and these indefinite release dates I definitely think is a good way to go for a lot of films because nobody knows when they're going to come out. So you might as well just delay them indefinitely and then come out when you're a bit more sure, rather than just delay films with more and more dates and stuff like that, because it just gets confusing for people. So yeah, I think this is fine. Now, the final piece of news which came out in the last couple of days, which has been kind of an ongoing story for a while, is that Johnny Depp has officially departed the Fantastic Beasts franchise. Johnny Depp, of course, played Grant Grindelwald in The Crimes of Grindelwald, the second film. And this is following on from a court battle between him and Amber Heard. Basically, they were both accusing each other of domestic abuse and domestic violence. And it came basically against Johnny in the end, and he has now been forced kind of to depart the series. This is a tricky case. I think that there's been a lot of accusations thrown around online. There's been a lot of things, people coming to Johnny Depp's defense and trying to get Amber Heard fired, and also other way around in some cases. And with Johnny Depp leaving the franchise midway through is very interesting, given the fact that, just speaking of the film, like his reveal at the end of the first film was quite a big thing. So to get him to come back to do the second film was great. And then he was going to, I imagine, carry on for I think it was 5 films they've got planned for Fantastic Beasts. So he was going to come back for all them and stuff like that. So it's definitely shaking things up quite a bit. And in regards to the court drama, I mean, that's a whole different story. But how are you feeling about this news? What did you take away from it?
Well, number one, I love Fantastic Beasts.
I do.
I really, really like those films. I think you didn't like the second one, right? As far as I can remember.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed the first one when it came out. The second one I didn't like at all. I mean, as context, I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I've not seen the majority of them, so I kind of went into them blindly. But the second film for me kind of felt like I enjoyed the first one. I thought it was fun, and then the second one, which I was excited about because the trailer was awesome. I just kind of felt like I was very much left behind with that film because there was a lot of Harry Potter lore stuff, and which obviously, no offense, it's no disrespect to the film. Obviously, I'm just not a Harry Potter fan. I'm not clued up on Harry Potter lore, but I kind of felt like I was watching the film in a different language. I don't understand half of the stuff that's being said. So yeah, I'm not really a massive, huge fan.
Yeah, I remember. I think we did a podcast episode around then, and I remember you talking about it. But yeah, I really like that film, and I really, really liked him as Grindelwald. So that's context. I did like him. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the court case, probably got what was coming to him, and I don't have much to say to do with that because I don't know what happened, and I think things happen both ways. But we'll have to wait and see. Time will tell with that. But in regards to him stepping down and him being asked to leave, it's not a surprise because it's very controversial. It's been controversial since he was first revealed in Fantastic Beasts as Grindelwald. And especially him being such a main character in the second one, it got a lot of people sort of riled up. And I think with this trial and the conclusion of everything, it seemed likely that something would happen to him and he wouldn't stick around that much in such a big film franchise. And I think Warner Brothers realized that, this potentially could be one of our biggest it is one of the biggest franchises, obviously excluding DC and a few other projects they got going. So Fantastic Beasts is going to go on for at least like 5 years more or something like that. I think they plan like 5 films, maybe 4. And it is Harry Potter after all, so I don't think they want to leave a bad sort of legacy. And I think, everything to do with J.K. Rowling recently, the fact that, Grindelwald, Crimes of Grindelwald wasn't, as received as well, and a lot of the blame was put on to her writing being so meta and not very like your complaint. I think that comes mainly from the writing, I would suppose. So she's not that involved in this new one. I think someone else is writing the screenplay, because that's what they did with the Harry Potter films. She didn't write the screenplays. Someone adapted her books, and she was just involved. She had a little bit of say, but she wasn't too involved. And I think the same thing goes for Fantastic Beasts 3. So, I think it's kind of good that they're distancing from her a bit, considering, her controversies recently. And I think it just makes sense that they went ahead with this with Johnny Depp, if they are kind of stepping away from that. And I'm interested to see what will happen, and if anything will happen with Ezra Miller, because he had that big controversy a while ago, and Warner Bros. Didn't even acknowledge it. And so I'm surprised that with them asking Johnny Depp to, step down, what are they going to do with him? Is he going to stick? What do you think?
I think Warner Brothers has been really inconsistent this year in regards to stuff like that.
They fired Hartley Sawyer straight away.
I was just about to say, like we've had all this different stuff. Amber Heard, who's also involved in this court case, and I mean, as you said, nobody really knows what really went down. To me, my perspective from what I've seen of it, it seems like there's blame on both sides. It seems like they were both pretty horrible to each other, and that was a pretty toxic relationship. So if that was the case, and Amber Heard has domestically abused Johnny Depp as well as he has probably domestically abused her, how come she's allowed to stay in Aquaman and in the DC franchise, and Johnny Depp has to step away? And then, like you say, Ezra Miller, who was literally physically recorded assaulting a woman, is allowed to stay on and play the Flash, and that movie's still going on. He was at DC Fandom, which took place after all that, and he was there. And then Hartley Sawyer on the Flash TV series. Obviously me and you are big DC guys and DC TV fans, and I've met Hartley Sawyer. He was a great character on the Flash, and he had these tweets that were dug up, and he was fired for that. And at the time, I even said that was inconsistent, not only because of the Ezra Miller stuff, but also it kind of makes Warner Brothers complete hypocrites, because they hired James Gunn to direct the Suicide Squad after he was fired from Marvel for the exact same thing. So where's your consistency, Warner Brothers? It makes no sense. I'm not blaming them for firing anybody. They can do what they want, but they're not being consistent. And I don't understand their logic with it. I don't understand why certain people are allowed to stay for certain things and other people have to go for others. It's just very mixed. And I'm like, again, it's your company. Do as you please. But where's your consistency? Especially with Johnny Depp, being such a big part of this franchise. He was such a big reveal. What they're going to do with that character, I don't know. I guess they could just recast him again. They could just get Colin Farrell to come back, who played him in the first movie. I don't know. It's very interesting, and I think that this whole situation has been very unfortunate for everybody. And I'm just very interested to see what Warner Brothers does next, not only in regards to this franchise, but also just in regards to these other people, especially like Amber Heard, because we know that obviously Aquaman 2 is happening, so theoretically she should be a part of that film. I'm hearing from certain people that apparently they are looking for a new female lead for that film anyway, who will sort of replace Mera in the film. Like, Mera will still be there, but not have a big role. Obviously, she'll be in the Snyder Cut too. We know that
I think she was shooting new scenes for it, right?
She is, yeah. They brought her back to shoot new stuff, so she's still in. So that they're clearly fine with that. Again, this is what I mean. There's no consistency with Warner Brothers and what they're doing. But in terms of the Fantastic Beasts franchise, like I say, I think that they just have to recast Johnny Depp, get someone else to play, whether it is Colin Farrell. Obviously, he's currently with Warner Brothers filming The Batman right now. So he's already in that camp. They could do that. Because I'm pretty sure they're filming Fantastic Beasts 3 right now, aren't they?
Yeah, in London.
So, and the Batman's filming in Liverpool. So again, that's pretty easy to do if he could go from one straight to the other.
I'm not sure if they're in Liverpool.
Oh,
They
they
were
still
in
they moved
Liverpool.
down.
I think
Yeah.
they're in America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, that might be a bit more difficult, but
Mhm.
still, you can get Colin Farrell to do it, or just cast someone else. Maybe if they're doing 5 films, just get someone else to play Grindelwald in each film. Make it fun. But I mean, I have to say, with Fantastic Beasts 3, I mean, I'm still interested to see it. Like, I've seen the first 2 films. I will see the third. And I believe it's set in Brazil, right? Or at least
I have
partially
no
set in
idea.
Brazil.
I
I
don't
read
know
something.
much about the film, to be honest, apart
I read
from
something that
in
it
the
was
next
set in
chapter.
Brazil, and I was like, "That's interesting," especially because obviously all the Harry Potter films are set in England, obviously. So I found it quite interesting in the Fantastic Beasts films. We've seen all these different locations. Like the first one was mainly set in France, um, and then we have
No,
this one. Was it New York?
first one New York, second one France.
Sorry, yeah, that was it. And then apparently this third one's in Brazil, and like that's cool. So we'll see what happens with that. But like I say, my main takeaway from this is that it's just Warner Brothers being inconsistent again, and I'm just kind of sick of their inconsistency. Because I'm kind of like, just either stick with one thing or don't do any of it, because you can't just pick and choose, you know? Because it's all going to be a PR nightmare for them, especially
Yeah.
because they can say, well, we got rid of this person for this, but then you're still keeping Ezra Miller after he was literally recorded for physically harming a woman on video, and yet you're keeping him as the Flash. Like it's a PR nightmare waiting to happen. So I'm just waiting to see how they handle it, really.
But he's like playing 2 big roles in 2 of Warner Bros. Biggest
Oh yeah, because
franchises.
he did
So
Fantastic
they
Beasts as
have
well, isn't he?
to yeah, that's why I meant. That's why I brought it up. Because they have to address it in some way, right? If he is such a big person in those 2 franchises.
I completely forgot he's in those films. So that makes literally no sense. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Declan's
Anyway.
come to a realization.
I completely forgot, and now I'm like, so they fired Johnny Depp from Fantastic Beasts, but Ezra Miller is still there, and he's still playing the Flash. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's very inconsistent, and I think going quickly back to the Hartley Sawyer thing, I think it was justified, but at the same time, I'm not sure because they hired James Gunn, so with that logic, they shouldn't have fired him. They should have given him a warning or something. And with this logic, with Johnny Depp, Ezra should definitely be fired. So I don't know.
Yeah. There's no consistency in this garbage. So let's just move on before I get any more frustrated. We have some reviews to do. We have a couple of reviews. So do you want to start off with Borat 2 or Borat subsequent movie film?
Yeah.
This was a pleasant surprise for this year. This just came out of nowhere. Sacha Baron Cohen just came out and said, right, I've made a new Borat film and it's coming out in a matter of weeks. I mean, I watched the first Borat just before this came out. I'd never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll admit, I didn't like it all that much. I just really didn't enjoy it. I thought to myself, the shtick of Borat got very old to me very quickly. I didn't find the film that funny. It just didn't really work for me. And I like Sacha Baron Cohen, but it didn't land for me too much. So I didn't go into Borat 2 with very high expectations. But what amazed me was how much I really liked Borat 2. And I like it a lot more than Borat 1, which really shocked me. But what's your feelings on it?
Well, I have always been a big fan of Borat, especially since it came out 14 years ago. There was an anniversary the other day. So 14 years ago, that would make it 2006. And I think maybe like a year, maybe 2 years later, I watched it for the first time when I was like 8 years old or something. I remember it would be a thing with like all my friends. You know, it's like the first kind of rude film that everyone kind of watched. And it was just hilarious. It was the best. Everyone's parents was like, don't watch Borat. But then everyone watched Borat. And so it holds a place in my heart because it's, you know, a part of my childhood, I guess. And so I was very excited when they announced Borat 2 and, you know, the fact that they've been secretly filming it. And I thought, you know, oh, wow, this is exciting, especially releasing it before the election. I was like, wow, you know, especially like going back and rewatching Borat, he literally takes he takes number 2 outside Trump Tower, which was
Yes, it
pretty
does.
damn funny and ahead of its time. So anyway, I really, really like Borat. Subsequent movie film. I love the title. It's like the long
Perfect. Yeah.
title is great. And it's a whole lot of fun. It's ridiculous. It's silly and hilariously real. And I think it's a weird kind of cross of reality and fiction that I think works. And I rewatched Borat like a few days after. Like I watched the original one a few days after I saw the second. And I think they're pretty similar. I think I do prefer the first because it was such a new thing. And obviously, I found it very funny in Borat too that when he first went to America again, everyone recognized him. I thought that was
Yeah.
hilarious. I was like, oh my
That
God,
see,
that's
that
very
really
smart.
worked for me. That was
Yeah.
like, as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, that's brilliant, because it's again, it's like you say, it's that cross between reality and fiction where when they made the first Borat, he could go out and do that because no one knew Sacha Baron Cohen was. But
Yeah.
now everyone knows the Borat shtick and everyone knows it. So when he's out and he's like being chased around New York, I thought that was hilarious. And again, it creates this interesting. It kept the movie kind of fresh because he had to come out with these new disguises throughout the film. Like I thought that really, really worked for me. Like I thought that was hilarious because again, it was smart, and also I don't obviously think that was something they planned for. I think that was something they just did on the fly because they got back and I don't think they thought of that, and it just kind of happened. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and so I like I said, I think I prefer the first one a tiny bit because it was the first, and I don't know, it holds a place for me. And I think they found a way to make this film its own. And he has these moments where he kind of reconciles on his culture's um misinterpretations, about lots of big things, lots of big events, and the way he perceives other people, he perceives women. And there's some great moments that come out of that, like with the old ladies in a church to do
Yeah,
with people being Jewish. That was hilarious. And then with with his daughter in the pregnancy place, like that was hilarious. Just the
that
way
was
he
great.
worded it,
Yeah,
was perfect because it made complete sense when you've seen the scene before when he's shoving the cupcake
yeah,
hiding around the corner into his daughter's mouth.
yeah,
But then in the context of the pregnancy place, it's like, yeah, this makes complete sense, but it's
yeah,
so stupid. And I think the stupidity of the film and of the character is just really great. And I think that's the best thing about it is he's just completely obscene. He's unrealistic, but at the same time, he's very realistic. He's like a
yeah,
person like that could exist. And I think people, especially in like America, do exist like that, just
yeah,
obnoxious to the world around. And there was just so many of those moments I mentioned that were great. I do think a few moments felt a little bit fabricated sometimes, with the with the fax machine and stuff, which was funny what they were typing. Sometimes with the shop owners were a bit kind of, they felt a bit unrealistic, but
yeah,
I guess they had to tell them because most people know what, like you said, what Borat looks like nowadays. So it's very hard to find someone who doesn't. But then, like, I think my favorite kind of revelation of the film was, you remember early in the year, Sacha Baron Cohen went on the stage at this Trump rally. You remember?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So that was reported in the media. We saw that in real life. We thought he was just punking, the stupidity of the Trump
yeah.
crowd out there. We thought he was just doing that for fun. Turns out it's in
It was
Borat
filming
too.
Borat. Yeah,
That was a great revelation to me, and I think that song he sings is absolutely fantastic. It is the rudest song like nearly ever,
yeah.
and the fact that he got everyone in the crowd to sing it, and they are real people thinking this is
Real
a real
people.
person
Yeah,
singing. He really got They got duped. He really got to
it's a
them, and I think
fantastic
it was
mirror.
great. Yeah, it was great. That was the perfect kind of blend of fiction and reality for me, because those people were oblivious and they were just singing whatever the hell he was singing. And so I think this film obviously fits into the kind of docudrama kind of thing because it's a mix of reality, them going around duping people and stuff, and going around with a silly law, to do with Kazakhstan and everything. And I think obviously it's not like the best made film ever or something, but it's just so I think the way they made it in secret and like in the pandemic, I just think it's very admirable and hilarious.
Yeah. I was just very impressed with it, and again, very surprised by it because I didn't go in with high expectations. I thought, because I just thought it'd be more of the same, and I think for a lot of people it is. I don't know what that change was for me. I think the change was honestly the addition of his daughter in the film, who plays such an instrumental role, and I thought that she was brilliant. And because again, going into it, I really don't like it when films and TV shows give their main characters a kid. I just think it always slows things down. I think it's always boring. I never enjoy their storyline. Very, very rarely do I enjoy those storylines. But Borat's daughter is just fantastic. Like, the actress who plays her does a phenomenal job. She's able to keep up with him, it must be such a hard thing to do. And she's genuinely hilarious in her own right. And what was great about her was, even if she's away from Sacha Baron Cohen, she is able to stand up on her own and still deliver great moments. And she's also, her character really grounds Borat to me. Like, he makes it seem, because even though his sort of inhumaneness, is almost this unreal person, is what makes him so funny. Actually seeing him sort of ground as a real person, like, because there's genuinely a really touching moment towards the end of the film between the two. It just made it, again, so much more attainable for me. And I loved their relationship and their dynamic, and how it changes throughout the film. I thought it was so special and genuinely well done. And she was so funny, like so funny to me. I think she was the thing that was missing from that first film for me. I think she was that that heart that was missing from the first film. She just completely took it up to a whole new level. And like I say, I genuinely found this movie funnier because, again, it was that scene where he first arrives in New York. Everyone recognizes him as being chased around. Brilliant, genuinely brilliant. And as you mentioned before, that scene in the abortion clinic is absolutely hysterical. I thought that was so well written, so well done, and they do it so convincingly. And that dancing scene in that that rich banquet, brilliant. I just genuinely thought it was so funny. Which again, I didn't really find the first film funny. Like, honestly, do you want to know the only thing that actually made me laugh in the first Borat? And I don't even know why this made me laugh so much. This is just, I don't know if this is reflective of my terrible sense of humor, but the scene when he first gets on the subway in the first film and he lets the chicken out. That to me was hilarious. But other than that, the movie really didn't do much for me. But Borat 2, I found it so entertaining, so much, so funny, and the lengths it goes to, no film gets away with that today. So it's almost very refreshing in that sense to see a film really go to those lengths. He even goes to these massive rallies, and like you say, he has that scene where he gets everyone singing, which is just an incredible mirror to that, a section of society. And then you have like him going to like the Mike Pence speech and stuff like that. They actually have Mike Pence on camera. Incredible stuff,
or the Rudy Giuliani bit.
That was just incredible.
So funny.
I mean, not incredible, but incredible in the way that they were able to do that. I mean, who gets away with that today? Like, who is able to actually make that happen?
Apparently, in that hotel room, they were. Apparently, Sacha Baron Cohen was like, they built in, because they were there before. They built in like a special kind of like section of the room where he was hiding, and if Rudy did anything, terrible, like because he's kind of like, I mean, it pretty much showed in the film. He's kind of a bit of a dark pervert, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's pretty obvious in the film. They were there to pounce on him. So I thought that was good that, the whole setup, everything was safe for her, even though she was kind of at risk. But at the same time, like,
they literally laid a trap for him.
Yeah, they laid a trap, and it was great.
Like that, I mean, that was phenomenal. Like, seeing that just captured, and then the fallout online, and Rudy himself trying to just like justify it and trying to, claw his way out of this hole it was amazing, honestly. And again, like him dressing up as Trump and going to that Mike Pence rally.
With his daughter on his shoulder.
His daughter over his shoulder. Really great. I mean, and I couldn't believe my eyes when he did when he dressed up as a member of the KKK and walked through that building. Like, the fact that he did that, I mean, that's so ballsy and just unreal. So again, it's just I've never seen a film go to that length before to really get this level of comedy. It was incredible.
Okay, so you like the Mike Pence bit with the daughter on the shoulder, but what about in the first Borat film when he when he throws the bag over Pamela Anderson? You didn't find that funny?
I did. I did find it funny. Like that was a decent scene. I don't know. It just didn't do it for me on the same level. I don't know if it's just. I think my problem with Borat is that, and I think that this is the reason why I think Borat 2, worked more for me, is that Borat I think was an incredible film at the time because back then, it came out in 2006, right, which was before really YouTube became what it was. We've seen stuff, or at least me, and this is just a problem that I didn't grow up with Borat. I didn't watch it until recently. I've seen stuff like Borat, on YouTube and stuff like that. Because Borat's a prank. That's basically what it is. Like on a very basic level, it's a prank. And we've seen stuff like that on YouTube for years now. And I think that's what it is. So stuff like that, like, where they just like go up to celebrities at conventions and stuff. Like I've seen that so many times.
Yeah.
Which I think is why Borat 1 didn't work for me. Whereas Borat 2, it didn't come across to me as a prank. It was more like again, they went so much further, in my opinion, with Borat 2, in regards to the level of the pranks, that's stuff I had not seen before. And that's what made it so funny to me. Whereas Borat 1, I was just like, yeah, it's funny, but it's just not very original, but it was original at the time. So again, that's not a negative towards the film. That's just personally for me. So that's my only explanation for it, really, that I can think of.
Yeah. No, it's understandable, and I'm glad you liked the second one because I really, really liked it. I think it's one of the funniest films I've seen this year.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think it's in my top 20. I mean, I've ranked every film that I see.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's in my top 20. It might be in my top 15. I really enjoyed it.
I think it's somewhere up the top. Like if I quickly check, it's
let me check mine.
Roughly. Borat 2 is 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's 21. So it's pretty much.
So is mine.
Yeah.
21 for me. So yeah. So yeah, I was surprised. I was genuinely shocked. I didn't expect to like it, and I really did. So that was nice. And I mean, 2020 hasn't exactly been a strong year for me in film, not only in regards to obviously the fact that barely anything's come out, but I mean, I've seen over 50 films this year, new releases, and I don't know, I've not had a particularly strong year in terms of like stuff I've really liked. So that was a nice surprise because it was something I didn't think I would, and I did. And I'm glad that you enjoyed it too. So we have one more review, which I'm going to hand over to you, as I've not seen this film yet. But this is a film I know you're very excited about, something you've been very excited to watch for a long time, and that is David Fincher's latest film, Mank. So I'll hand that over to you.
Yeah, so I'm the same. I've watched I've watched exactly 57 films this year. Is that about the same as you?
I think I'm on 53.
Okay, so pretty damn close anyway. And out of those 57 films, which are a big range, David Fincher's Mank is right at the top. It's really, really, really good.
Number one.
I haven't decided yet. I'm gonna watch it again probably in the next few days because it's very it absorbs you so much, and the feeling I've had since I watched it yesterday is I'm kind of lost in my thoughts about it because there is so much, and it makes you feel kind of like you're lost in this dream. And so right now I need to rewatch it before I properly rank it, but it's up there with my favorite films like Saint Maud's, Tenet, and Another Round. I think those four, including Mank, are my favorite films, bar nothing. This year, I think those four are just incredible. But talking about Mank and actually reviewing it now, it's completely, I think the word is rapturous. It's like it just involves you so much, it engages you, and I think the specific topic it's tailor-made for me. It is exactly what I love. I mean, I go to the cinema and I watch new films when they're really good. Like I watched Tenet like I watched it like 6 times in the cinema.
Yeah.
I watched Saint Maud 4 times in the cinema. But apart from that, no other film this year have I gone back and seen it so much. And this is a film where I want to do that. It is a film where if it was in the cinema, I would have seen it. I would have probably seen it like, a few more times in the week or something. But yeah, it's tailor-made for me because, I go to cinema to see old films primarily. That was my point. Because I live in London, there is the BFI and the Prince Charles, and they show a lot of old films. And specifically, I love Hollywood's golden age. And this is exactly what you study when you do film studies at school. You study that classical era between 30s to the 50s. Well, this primarily focuses on the 30s and 40s. And it's this really, really nice hybrid of modern day. It's got the Fincher-esque update to it in that, it's photographed in high dynamic range. It's in a 2:39:1 ratio, which was not a thing in the 30s and 40s. And that's obviously a big difference from emulating the style of the time. That style came in around the 50s and 60s more so. So he kind of updates it in a way that it reflects his filmmaking style, which is very widescreen. That is Fincher's normal ratio is 2:39:1. And it's shot digitally, but I don't think that's a problem. Normally I'm a big advocate for film, but the thing is, the way that they do it, they actually grade it to cut it down rather than having the film stock and having to emulate it. Kind of, I think they could be more precise with everything because they obviously have more experience digitally recently, and what they did with the color grade is amazing. And they flattened it a lot. They flattened it so it's really soft. It emulated the style of the time, and yes, it's a bit different. There was a fly in my face. And there's beautiful blacks, whites, and grays, and it's really, really just really luscious to look at, and it really, really says so much to do with how precise this film is in terms of its depiction. I think films, and recently we watched what's the new Anya Taylor-Joy TV show?
The Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit. It was
Yeah.
really good, right? It was a really good show. And
Is that a
this
show?
isn't it. Yeah, it's a show, and it was really good. It was a good show. But just using it as an example, and I think this applies to a lot of modern films. When films set themselves back in time, they always get the look right. They always get the kind of production design, costumes right. The actors are great, and I think the cinematography is great. But it's very, very rare that a film perfectly portrays the time in how films were made at that specific time. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the perfect example of it perfectly working. It emulated how 60s films were made to the point. Exactly right, exactly how they were. It feels like it could have been made in the 60s. And this film, although updated with a different aspect ratio and, the digital rather than film, apart from that, which is not very noticeable, you get absorbed in it that much, so it doesn't matter. It feels like it could have come out of the 30s and 40s. I think that is down to the number one, the accents. It's very hard to emulate those accents, and just referencing the Queen's Gambit, the new TV show, I think the production design is great and the cinematography is great. Obviously, the cinematography doesn't evoke the time that it was in the 50s. However, it's a stylization of potentially what could have been. But the accents don't try and beat accents from the 50s. And so, after watching that and going on to Mank, it was just really, really emphasized to me that Fincher took so much time with these actors to say, you can't speak as you normally speak or anywhere close to it. You got to watch those old films, and you got to watch how Betty Davis talks. You got to watch how, Ingrid Bergman talks. You got to watch everyone back then in the classical era of Hollywood in the golden age. And same thing goes for the male actors. You have to listen to how Humphrey Bogart talks. You have to listen Cary Grant or something, and I think this is the perfect sort of embodiment of that time, and it's completely spellbinding. And I think it's worthy of like Orson Welles himself, because what this film is about Herman Mankiewicz, who was the screenwriter who only got co credits on the screenplay of Citizen Kane, which is notably one of the best films of all time.
Yeah.
It was known as the best film of all time for, I think, nearly 60 years or something, until about 10 years ago when Vertigo overtook it to be number one. And currently it's number two on the best films of all time, ranked by all the filmmakers around the world and everything. And for me, Citizen Kane, when I first watched it in the cinema, I watched it on film, so how it was supposed to be, and it just really, really called out to me. And I think it's, easily one of the best films ever. So I agree with that completely. And yeah, so it's about the screenwriter. The story's really interesting. It's about them making Citizen Kane, but less so about Orson Welles. It's more about who actually wrote the screenplay and his sort of mind and the way it worked into this sort of, and it goes into this kind of delirious phase of drunkenness. And this is the kind of spellbinding and rapturous feeling I'm talking about. It's to do with the period, but also to do with his mindset. And I think what is made is something similar to the style of Citizen Kane, but it's different in its own unique ways, that it emulates his mind and his mindset. And I think the beaming lights and the sun like streaking into the room, and it being all dusty and smoky and everything, it really, really kind of has this great feeling that evokes what is going on essentially in the story. And so I think everything bounces off so well. I think universal praise is, definitely should be given to the whole entire cast and the crew, because, the cinematography is absolutely beautiful. That was obvious from the trailers. We knew it was going to be. We knew it was going to be pristine. It was going to look like a old classical Hollywood film. And I think, yes, it's updated with it. I think the biggest update is the Fincher style, is the widescreen style. But apart from that, the way that some of the shots are edited, the way it's cut, and the direction, he's looked at these old films that he loves. It's like he's just pulled this out of someone's basement, like an old film reel or something. And he's just kind of emulated that, and he's brought it back to life. And for me, obviously it works. And for a lot of cinema lovers, this is going to be a treasure. But for modern audiences who look back upon old films, especially black and white films, as in, oh, they're not worth the time. It's not in color. No, thank you. I'm going to watch the Avengers or something. I get that. I love films, like Avengers Endgame or something. But for me and for cinema lovers, this is the encapsulation of why I like films. And watching those old films, like the other day I saw The Killers, which is a film noir from the 40s. I saw it in the cinema, and watching films like that, I always ask myself, why don't we make films like this anymore? What happened to this style? And I think a film like this is really rare, and I think it's really to be treasured, because it's a style that is not made anymore, is very unconventional in present day. Yes, films like Avengers Endgame are great. I loved it. It was, one of my favorite films of the year. And even going as far to say, some of my favorite films like, Midsummer or something, or I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like Tenet, or, anything like that, right? They are great. They are a new style, but where did that old style go? That is the question that, when I watch those old films, I'm like, oh, I really want to, I want to see Singing in the Rain in modern day. I want to see, Casablanca or something. And I think this film is that I've been wanting. And so really for me, it's very personal, because it's, you know, kind of encapsulates the films I love. I love a broad range of films. You know, my favorite films are westerns, horrors, you know, gangster films. They are different, obviously, but along with that, my other favorite films are films from the classical period in Hollywood, where you get the screwball comedies, you get like Bringing Up Baby, or you get, you know, the film noirs like Big Sleep or Double Indemnity, or, you know, The Big Heat. All of those films are, you know, part of my favorite, you know, list of films that goes on and on and on. And I mean, I can talk about films all day. I've been talking about this film for so long, and I got a lot more to say. But I think Mank is really the answer for all of us who love those classical films, and it feels like you're sucked into this kind of like whirlwind that you just can't escape. And that's why what I said and reference at the start about like me wanting to watch it again, because for me there are so many references that I obviously caught on to, and there are some things that, you know, I need to think about some more. And I think it's rather simple. The story is just, you know, screenwriter trying to make Citizen Kane. He has some troubles, and, you know, his past encapsulates what leads up to creating Citizen Kane. Story's pretty simple, but you go around to all these different events. Notably, there's these flashbacks that don't work like typical flashbacks because they don't have specific meaning for the present day, but they're just moments in time that kind of add up to his character. And you see all these famous people like, I loved their interpretation of Louis B. Mayer, who founded MGM Studios, who at the time were obviously huge because they were the musical studio. They were the biggest studio out of them all. And so I love just the talk of them, you know, going around, you know, he just walks around the film set, the MGM lot, and he's talking to Louis B. Mayer. And I think the actor who played him, Ardlis Howard, did such a great job. And he really had so much life to him. And or it's just like, it's down to all these specific moments, like just chumming around and just having fun with Marion Davies, who was a big film star of the time, who was kind of struggling by the time of the 30s and 40s. She was a silent film star, and that's played by Amanda Seyfried. So Amanda Seyfried is unrecognizable. She's fantastic in this role. She and Gary Oldman's interactions, it's not, I don't see Gary Oldman. I don't see Amanda Seyfried. I see Marion Davies. I see Herman J. Mankiewicz. I don't see these people. This is what I mean when it's like a transportation to that time period. I'm, you know, it in my mind, I'm like, how aren't these people, you know, why, where were they? These people feel like they're actually in the 30s and 40s. Are we not in the 30s and 40s right now? What's going on? And just the dialogue and the way that Fincher's dad wrote this, it's got so much to it. And I think Fincher's, you know, David Fincher's direction really plays off of that fantastic screenplay. You know, there is this one line that I've got written down that I really liked. It's just an example, and there's so many lines like this throughout the film. And I think the editing plays a big part in such great moments like this. This is Marion Davis's line. So Amanda Seyfried, she says she's up on the stake. You've probably seen the photos when she's up in the air, and Mank is on the ground, and she's like, just, you know, getting ready for a scene. She got an umbrella or something hiding her face. She sees Mank and she goes, "I know you." Just shouting out loud, you know, from a far distance. It's very innocent. It's like, I know you. We met at John Gilbert's birthday. You're Herman J. Mankiewicz. It's just like this kind of nice, kind of witty style that this film has that is very unlike Fincher. It doesn't feel like, you know, typical Fincher. There is no harshness. There is no brutality in any way. It's him at his most sort of, you know, what, like innocent, I guess, where he's just, you know, loving films. It's just a film about loving films, and all these moments, like, you know, them discussing Warner Brothers and, you know, them releasing 42nd Street and being like, you know, why are you supporting Warner Brothers when you're at MGM? And, you know, like the stars being contracted to being in the studio. And so I think the screenplay is just fantastic, and I think it creates such a fascinating story that has made me just go on and on and on about this film, because I'm really lost in it. And like, pairing with that, you have the score, which is like a really nice kind of old style classical Hollywood score, the blaring kind of orchestral music that evokes all the emotions, and the sort of romance, the cuteness of it all, the innocence. And it has this kind of Vertigo, like if you've watched Vertigo, and I know Vertigo comes out in the 60s, late 50s, but the Bernard Herrmann kind of style of score, and along with the original kind of composers of the golden era, it all kind of adds up to play towards everything. This sort of great mix of, number one, the accents and the acting. The accents go with the acting. So the acting, I'll say. The acting, the direction, the writing, the editing, I think those three work perfectly together. And then the acting goes along with that, because you can't have this good acting and this perfected sort of style of acting without great directing. And they couldn't have said those great words without the screenplay. And it wouldn't have felt like the period without the cinematography, which evokes a sort of film noir look, but also the kind of bright kind of softness of, early Hitchcock films, or, Bringing Up Baby or something. And then, adding along with that, the love of cinema, just going around talking to these people, these famous faces that aren't necessarily known to people in the modern day, but people who love classical films, I think will really, really eat this up like I have. And you will not stop talking about it like me. And I think you will be left in this sort of sense of awe and speechlessness that I'm kind of in. Like, of course, I can talk forever about it, but at the same
I
time,
was
I'm
going to say
kind of like,
speechless is not the word I would use to
no,
describe
no,
you.
yeah, it's not speechless, but it feels like
No, I know what you
I'm
mean. I know what you mean.
I'm kind of, reaching for something, but at the same time, it's sort of this. It's just this feeling, and I think it just needs to be watched and watched and watched and watched. And before you watch it, I really recommend you watch Citizen Kane, for one. Maybe, I mean, I just naturally do a lot of research, and I know a lot about the time period and the actors and the film studios and how it all worked back then with the studio contract system. And I think if you have some sort of insight, it will really, really help you a little bit to sort of adore it even more. But I think you will like it if you aren't so into that. I'm not saying that you have to research to do it. I think watching Citizen Kane is a good start. Um, but apart from that, I think anyone will like it. They will definitely adore the kind of style of it all and the way it evokes this sort of past time period. And so I really, really liked it. I thought it was a film kind of unlike anything I've seen in, when was the last time? Maybe like, obviously barring Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, maybe the last time something evoked an earlier period so well. I mean, I love films like The Favorite and stuff, and maybe The Lighthouse is a great example of evoking a period. But I like films like The Favorite like really a lot, but it's kind of a modernization of the past. So if we're going something so true, barring The Lighthouse and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, last time was probably like Eyes Wide Shut in 1999. That doesn't feel like a 90s film. That feels like a Kubrick film from, the 60s or something. So it's kind of remarkable looking at like something like Eyes Wide Shut and being like, what, this was made in 1999?
Yeah.
And I think the same applies to Mank. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that's
for
my review.
me, that was very good. I do enjoy watching you work. I mean, Mank for me was it's something that I've been interested. It's something that's been like a long time coming. Obviously, David Fincher is one of those directors that when he releases a film, it's an event really, and it's coming out in December, right, on Netflix.
Yeah, early December.
I'm hoping that come early December, the lockdown here should be over and my local independent cinema will open, because they have been showing a lot of Netflix movies in the last couple of years. So I'm really hoping that they'll actually show this if things are all open by then. But for me, like you say, I was very excited about this film. I love the cast as well. One thing I actually didn't know until yesterday, cast member I didn't even know was in it, is Tom Pelphrey, who I love. Great. I love Tom Pelphrey. He's one of the main. Well, he becomes a main character in a show called Banshee, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, and he's phenomenal in that. So I didn't know he was in it. I was like, good for him. I'm glad he's in it. Good for him to be in a Fincher movie. So that already boosted my excitement that it already was. But I think that film fans particularly love nothing more than films about filmmaking. And you brought up Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I think is a really interesting comparison, because obviously that film has a lot to do with filmmaking on a certain side of it. And also, I completely agree that Hollywood completely captured that time period. Like, watching that film, like, I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Watching that film, it truly felt like, honestly, my favorite scenes in that film are the scenes where it's just Brad Pitt's character driving around, because it was just, it felt like he was so much in that world and in that time period and in Hollywood of the 60s. It just felt so true. And I think that this film, as you say, could very much convey those same feelings. So I'm very interested to check it out. I'm very interested to see it. I actually want to go and catch up on some other Fincher films that I've not seen, because I'm kind of a Fincher virgin, really. Not entirely, but there are a couple of films of his that I still need to go see. So I want to go check those out before this comes out. Maybe do a ranking video or something. That'd be fun. But I think that this film could be really interesting, and something that, I always say that I kind of enjoy films that are very chilled out and kind of very relaxing. And I kind of get that vibe from this. I don't know if you can testament to that. I think it's quite, I get the vibe that the film, because you're saying that unlike a lot of Fincher films that are very brutal and have that kind of edge to them, this film doesn't really have that. And that's obviously not necessarily a negative, but I think that is something that appeals to me. Like, one of my favorite films of all time is Patterson, which is just like the ultimate chill out movie to me. So I'm very excited to watch it from that perspective too. So like I say, I'm really hoping that things open up here and then my local cinema can show this, because they have been showing Netflix movies. Like, I watched Marriage Story there, I watched The Irishman there. So I'm really hoping that they show it, because it looks great and I'm very, very excited to check it out. But even if I don't, it'll be on Netflix. So last thing I think we should do before we end this, I don't know if you want to mention anything, but I just thought maybe we could talk about just anything that you've watched recently, sort of in the last week or so, that you want to mention.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to pull up my letterbox really quickly, because that is, I always try and keep up to date with that. Like, I think it's a good diary. I really like it. I like comparing.
Oh, I love Letterboxd.
I like comparing films. That's just the thing I like.
I do as well.
But yeah, so I watched some really good films. Are we talking about new films or old films? Or a mix?
Whatever. Well, anything you've watched recently.
Well, I watched a whole range of films, especially since the cinemas were shutting down. So I was trying to get around to see everything. I watched Pan's Labyrinth in the cinema.
I saw it,
which is one of my favorite films. It was really great to see it in cinema for the first time. And then the next day, I saw Saint Maud twice in the same day. I'd never done that before.
That's crazy.
So I thought that was pretty impressive. I was pretty impressed with myself. And I really enjoyed it, actually. I mean, Saint Maud was my favorite film of the year already by those two watches, because I've seen it twice before. But watching on those 2 times more, like, really solidified it, especially in a row, because, like, for a lot of people, that would be kind of a drag, to watch a film twice in a row. It has to be that good, right?
Yeah.
And I think it really confirmed it is that good. And then the next day, I watched The Exorcist in the cinema. Fantastic. The first time I watched it in the cinema, I've watched it at home twice, I think. And I watched the director's cut of it, which was interesting. There was the addition of something happening on the stairs, which was great. I still think I prefer the original cut, because there is a few things that are inserted that I think could have done with not being inserted, but that's not to say I didn't like it, because it's I think one of the best horror films ever made. And then I later in that evening, because this was like the second to last day, second to last day, so Wednesday before the cinema shut down. So I went to Prince Charles twice in that day, saw Goodfellas in the evening, and man, I love watching Goodfellas in the cinema. That was maybe the second, well, it's definitely the second, maybe the third time I've watched it in the cinema. And there is something about watching Goodfellas in the cinema that really, really just calls out to everyone there. Everyone is having an absolute blast. It's literally, when I was watching, I was like, this is just one of the best films ever made. Like, it is perfect in literally every way. Just for instance, the way that there is so much music throughout. Literally, most moments have music, but when there's silent and when there's no music,
Yeah.
it's very impactful. And just especially, like I've said this before, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's like one of my favorite films now ever. I've watched it so many times, and the way Tarantino uses music in all his films really calls out to me. And same with Scorsese. And I think there is just something about Scorsese and gangster films that just it works so goddamn well. And Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and everyone just bouncing off of each other. Ray Liotta, goddamn, I just love Goodfellas, and in the cinema it's amazing. I highly recommend it if you can ever do that. And then the final day of the cinema, we watched Psycho in the cinema. Amazing. I love Psycho. It was one of my favorite films for a long time, and I hadn't watched it in about a year. It was way too long, and since I have watched it, and I really, really like watching it again. Following that, that was when the cinema shut on Thursday, and then watched another Hitchcock film that I'd never seen before, The Lady Vanishes. I don't know if you've heard of it. Maybe you've
I've
heard
heard
of
of
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of his early films in 39, and so it's pretty early on in Hollywood. And I think it's this kind of nice mix of Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie's, and what would become Hitchcock's suspenseful style. Is this nice mix. The start is a bit weird. It doesn't feel like a Hitchcock film. But then once they get to, so it's set out mainly on the train, because the lady vanishes. So this lady vanishes, and there's this mystery. Where has this specific woman? Where's she gone? Like, this person has seen this lady.
Yeah.
And so this mystery kind of plays on. It's kind of like Murder on the Orient Express, because there is a lot to do with all the different passengers. And so I really liked it. I really liked the mystery. I thought, by the end, it was really, really good. So, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that I've been watching, and a lot of great stuff. And I've been trying to watch a whole range of stuff, like, saw, like I said, The Untouchables in the cinema. Fantastic. I really want to just watch all the Brian De Palma films. I've been listening to his interviews and things like that. Also watched Cinema Paradiso for the first time. Fantastic. Seriously, like, that's again a personal film for me, because it's all about the cinema. And I don't know, have you watched it?
No, I think my friend watched that recently, but no, I know what it is. I've not seen it myself. No.
Yeah, so it's this Italian film, and it's scored by Ennio Morricone. Been watching a lot of Ennio Morricone films, because he died recently, and the BFI was doing a season for Ennio Morricone. So I watched Once Upon a Time in the West. I watched The Hateful Eight, Cinema Paradiso, and with The Untouchables is Ennio Morricone as well. So I went to the season for that to try and watch as much as I can, because he's my favorite composer. So yeah, just a whole lot of stuff, and a whole lot of great films. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you had quite a good run in the last run before cinemas shut down again. I mean, the last film I watched in the cinema, which was last Friday, I actually watched Saint Maud. That was the last film that I saw. for me, Saint Maud was a film I went into not really expecting to like it all too much, just because I kind of could tell just based on the trailer. As great as the trailer was, I kind of thought to myself, I don't know if this is going to gel with me. I liked it more than I thought I would, because what I didn't know, I guess me just being blind and stupid,
Mm,
I thought the film was a period piece. I didn't actually know it was set in the modern day. So when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is a nice surprise. Because typically I don't take to period pieces too well. It kind of depends on what it is, but it's just kind of a genre I typically don't gel with too much. But so that was a nice surprise. I thought the direction was really good. The main performance is incredible. And I think Rose Glass as the director, I think is someone that I think is going to really rise up in the ranks over the next few years. I think she's someone that people will really take a look at, and she will continue to grow over the next few years, especially in the horror genre. I'm really excited to see what she does next. It's just, for me, this particular story didn't land with me completely, and I did find
I saw your star rating.
yeah. It was me being, and that's not what I will say about my letterbox is that I do it purely based on enjoyment, not critical. So, I actually think the film was pretty good. I just didn't really enjoy it as much as I hoped I would. Because again, I found a lot of horror movies, especially in the last couple of years, to be something that I've really enjoyed. Stuff like The Lighthouse and Midsummer. And I was hoping that Saint Maud was going to go along with that in that sort of trajectory, but unfortunately it didn't. It just kind of fell a little bit flat for me in certain areas. I don't know if it was maybe the religious aspect that kind of lost me. That kind of was something that I found difficult to get my head around, especially towards the end of the film when you get to the confrontation between her and her patient, particularly, and the scene with the wings. I found a bit odd. But the film does end extremely well. Like, I think the ending is fantastic, and very striking. But the majority of the film, for me, it was a very up and down movie, and I found parts of it to be a bit too much for my personal taste. Again, I think it's a pretty great film. I enjoyed it. I think Rose Glass has done a great job with this as a debut, like a feature directorial debut. I think it's fantastic, and I loved the actress who played Maud. I thought she was phenomenal. It's just, for me personally, like my personal taste, it didn't quite land as well as I was hoping it would. So that's Saint Maud. And then the other film I watched, which I watched on Halloween, I watched Halloween, the 2018 version, because I had not seen that yet. I really liked the original Halloween. I watched that a couple of years ago now, and I really liked that film. I thought that was fantastic. So I was pretty excited to watch the 2018 one. I've been excited to watch it for a while. So I finally sat down. I thought, hey, it's on Netflix now. Halloween night, perfect timing. And I really enjoyed it as well. I thought it was really fun. I don't think it's quite as good as the original, but I think it's still a really great sequel. And obviously, they kind of did this thing with it where they retconned the rest of the franchise. So it's just now in continuity, it's just this one and the original. And I thought it was a great story. Like, I loved having Jamie Lee Curtis come back and just being like this badass Laurie Strode. I thought that was just awesome to see. And all the other characters I really enjoyed in the film. What they did with Michael Myers as a character, actually kind of making him, adding a bit more depth to him in a weird way, rather than just making him this like kind of faceless monster. There was a bit more to him, which made him a bit more interesting as a threat. I just found it a very entertaining horror film, and it had a lot of fun to it. It also was very entertaining to watch. And for a Halloween watch, I wanted to watch something on Halloween just to kind of get with the season, spooky season, got to get with it. I thought it was a perfect fit, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm very excited to see this Halloween Kills movie that we're getting now, which is coming out, I think, next year now. I'm very excited to see where that goes. So for me, that was a perfect watch for Halloween. And the final thing that I watched, which was just a purely silly thing, is a film from my childhood, which I just went to back to revisit, which was DreamWorks' Flushed Away. Loved it. I still love it. I think that film's great. It's a very different film for DreamWorks. Like, it's mainly actually made by the British studio Aardman, who made Wallace and Gromit. And I think Flushed Away is one of the most underrated DreamWorks films. It's genuinely really funny. It still makes me laugh today. And obviously I have nostalgia for it, so that doesn't help. But it's just this film that I think is genuinely really cleverly written, and it's got these fantastic performances who, again, just nail the comedic side of it. And I don't know if it's just because my sense of humor, I mean, obviously I am British, but my sense of humor is very British. Like I very much into that style of humor. And this film just reflects that so well, which I think is why it makes me laugh so much. And even from an animation standpoint, like, it doesn't look like any other DreamWorks films. It looks like an Aardman film, but with the budget of a DreamWorks movie. And that combination is fantastic. So I think it's so exciting. I think it's very unique. I can't believe we never got a sequel to it. I'm very upset that we never did, because I think it is one of those DreamWorks films that people don't really talk about. They kind of forget about it. And a lot of people don't even realize it's DreamWorks, I think, because of its different look and different animation style. But I think it's genuinely very clever, very witty, very funny, great performances across the board from everybody. Like Hugh Jackman as the lead and Kate Winslet. I think they both do fantastic jobs with the film. Ian McKellen plays the villain. He's great. And Andy Serkis is like the true standout. Like he's hilarious in the film. Him and Bill Nighy, who are kind of like this sort of dynamic villain duo, are the real like treasure of the film. I just love it. It feels so British and so perfectly English, while also having this budget of this bigger style American animation film. I think it's just phenomenal, and I still absolutely loved it today. It was great to go back to. But that's everything that I've watched in this week. But I think going ahead, I think after hearing you just kind of go on and on about Mank, it really makes me want to go back and watch some David Fincher films now. I kind of want to go watch a Fincher film right now.
I'd say you don't need to watch every single Fincher film, because I haven't watched every Fincher film. I'm still behind on Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I'm behind on, I haven't seen Gone Girl. I've been meaning to watch it. I haven't seen Zodiac, but I've seen Fight Club a few times. Love the film. I freaking love Seven. Social Network is really, really good.
Yeah, see, I love Social Network. That's one I have seen. I love Social Network.
Mm-hmm. And then Mank is completely different from those three films. Like I said, there are some bits that are kind of I think it's his smoothness, the way he does cinematography, the way he works with his cinematographers, it's very smooth. It's always kind of very intricate, and I really like it. He brings that over. I think that's the biggest thing he brings over, and otherwise it's a completely new style of Fincher from what I've seen. Obviously I need to catch up with some of the other ones, but I think watch a few Fincher films, but also definitely watch Citizen Kane if you haven't watched it. Maybe pick a few films I can recommend. Pick a few films from the 40s.
Send me a list.
Yeah. So
all right, well, that's perfect. So I'd say that just about brings this first episode of Real Movie Talk to a close. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys for joining us on this live stream. I think we've had a couple of people in and out of the stream, which has been really great to see. If you guys would like to see more of this, make sure you let us know in the comments down below. Give this a like. It really helps us out. And hopefully we'll be able to do another one of these fairly soon. Hopefully we can make this a bit more consistent than the last one, which I can't. I mean, it's mainly my fault. It's mainly my fault. But hopefully we can make it a bit more consistent than the last one. But anyway, I hope that you guys did enjoy this episode, and make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell for any more uploads from me. If you want any more movie content, TV content, video game content, everything else in between, make sure you stay tuned. And as always, I hope to see you guys again in my next video or my next live